Right, confession time. I actually test rode the Speed 400 last week at the same time as the press launch in Valencia, Spain. And as I was putting this video together, the first reviews began to appear on YouTube. You've probably seen them. Some of them, in particular the young journalists from the UK's most famous weekly motorcycle magazine, were waxing lyrical about the Speed 400. And I thought, have I missed something? I mean, yeah, it was good, but the way these guys are banging on about it, you'd think Triumph had reinvented the wheel. I don't think I've ever seen such effusive positive reviews of a bike. So I decided to go back to Triumph Algarve this morning and take the bike out for a second time just to check. And yeah, they're right actually, it really is good. 40 horsepower, 5,500 euros and a Triumph badge on the tank. What's not to like? I have to say that at first glance it does look remarkably similar to my 1200. Okay, a bit less beefy, but the details are there. High rear mudguard, aluminium heel guards, quality paintwork on the tank, logo, single headlight, and you even get nice gold forks, which mine doesn't, despite costing 3 times the price. For a beginner, or the uninitiated, the new Speed 400 is off to a pretty good start. Thing is though, you and I, we're not beginners, are we? We know about bikes, we are initiated, and we can spot an imposter at 100 paces. Think of the Triumph Speed 400 as a Super 125, and I mean that in a good way. It's relatively light at just 170 kilos wet, it's relatively low with a seat height of 790 millimeters, and while with just 40 horsepower it's hardly going to pull your arms off, I never really had the feeling that it was underpowered, like I did with 125s. Gears run short with the first 3 especially low. Now this makes getting away from traffic at a set of lights easy, although the price to pay is at higher speeds of course, as you'll find yourself at a slightly buzzy 6,000 RPM at 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles an hour. Gear changes are light and direct, and the clutch lever is very light. The switch gear is not standard Triumph, as you might expect. The bike is, after all, made by Bajaj, but it doesn't feel too plasticky. It's good to the touch with positive movement, and everything is where you'd expect it to be. There's a USB-C positioned nicely next to the dash, and very decent Pirelli or Metzeler tyres, depending on the market. A very wise upgrade over the seat rubber the bike gets in the Indian market. You get gold anodized Showa forks, a single front brake by Bybre, the Indian sub-brand of Brembo, but it's radially mounted and has a good positive feel. I believe that the pads are more bitey on the Speed compared to the Scrambler 400X, so that's something you need to watch out for. You get standard bar end mirrors, which offer good rear vision. They don't vibrate, and they look a bit like the expensive Rocket 3 mirrors that I wanted to put on my Speed Twin a few weeks ago, until my dealer told me I would also need around 200 euros worth of additional parts to install them properly. This is what it looks like under the seat. There's not much space for anything really, maybe a small disc lock behind the battery, and the dealer managed to squeeze the documents in here right at the back. You get a nice chrome fuel cap, all the cables have been tidied away. The rear light is beautifully sculpted and I think looks nicer than the period correct but rather nondescript one on my Speed Twin 1200. The standard rear grab handles, which its bigger siblings don't get either, are great not only for passengers of course, but also for attaching luggage and manoeuvring the bike around in your garage. No doubt about it, for the money this is a very well equipped bike. I think they may have missed a trick with the logo though. The oversized Triumph badge is lifted from the sportier and some would say more youthful Trident 660. I think if they offered at least the option of a more retro style tank badge like this, they'd have been onto a winner. Naysayers would probably have accused them of milking their heritage, but really, does that matter? After all, it is their heritage to milk, and if people want it. But as things stand, nothing looks or feels substandard on this bike. I think people should see the 400 as a scaled down Speed Twin 9 or 1200 rather than a cheap imitation. So what about this engine? Well, I've owned a few small bikes, including a 9 horsepower Honda Vision scooter, a Monkey and a Grom. And while they're great fun, they're limited power and, in the case of the Monkey and Grom, limited space. they're not the most versatile of bikes. The Speed 400 can be taken on fast roads. This was a brand new bike, so I couldn't really hammer it, but I reckon it would easily be able to cruise at 110, 120 kilometers an hour on a motorway that's 70 miles an hour. Probably more if you push it. There's ample room for a pillion. Okay, there are better bikes for touring Europe 2 up, but for your average journey, the 400 is up to the job. The sound is great for a small engine too. It's meaty and quite loud, but not tiresomely so. But the standout feature of the engine for me is the torque. 38 newton meters, 28 foot-pounds might not sound like much, but it's available nice and low down in the rev range, and crucially with only 170 kilos to push around, you're never really desperate for more oomph, at least on urban and semi-urban roads like these. You're a lot more at ease than you are with a 125, which for those of you outside Europe are limited to a maximum of 15 horsepower, but are popular because you can ride one on a car license with little to no extra training. As I said, I owned a Honda Monkey and a Honda Grom, both 125s, and while they do look cute, you soon realise that for use on the road with traffic, they are quite limited. Now, I'm probably going to upset a few people here, but in terms of responsiveness and overall feel, I found the Speed 400 not dissimilar to the Royal Enfield Interceptor. Yes, the Triumph is about 10 horsepower and 15 newton meters down, but it's a whopping 50 kilos or 110 pounds lighter, and you can certainly feel that on the road. Now, I've ridden, I think, every model in Triumph's lineup, from the Trident to the Rocket 3, and the new Speed 400 feels just as much a Triumph as, say, a CB300R feels like a Honda compared to an Africa Twin or a Fireblade. Yes, you lose a bit of the premium sheen and power, of course, but other than that, it's perfectly acceptable. How about alternatives? Well, the CB300R is an obvious contender. It's exactly the same price, at least here in Portugal. 8 or 9 horsepower down, but with the reassurance of Honda reliability and a dealer on the corner of every street. Don't believe me? Triumph has 700 dealers worldwide. Honda has 30,000. The Speed 400 will always have the Triumph cachet, however. A sex appeal that the Honda just can't quite muster. Triumph manages to feel special, the Honda just feels like a motorcycle. A good one, but not especially exciting. Other competitors in Europe would include bikes like the Royal Enfield Hunter 350, quite a bit cheaper at just €4,200, but it's only got half the power and, like the Honda, lacks the Triumph's premium looks and feel. There's the Scram 411, €600 saving over the 400, but that's still only 24 horsepower and the looks are more utilitarian. There's the Triumph Scrambler 400X, of course, which is a bigger bike physically. It looks even nicer in my opinion, and you can take it off-road a bit. Otherwise, mechanically, it's very similar. €3,000 up the Triumph ladder. You've got the Trident 660, of course, much sportier with twice the power, but all things considered, the Triumph has pretty much got the market to itself, combining the power and looks of more premium models with the price that comes with outsourcing production to Asia. A final comment on reliability, which is something I don't usually touch on with these quick tests. When I'm interested in a bike, either to buy for myself or just research for these reviews, I usually join a few Facebook user groups to get a feeling for owners' first impressions, see what kind of third-party accessories are available, and if there are any teething problems. Issues are commonplace with almost all new bikes, and being a completely new platform, I was expecting a few with these 400s, and there have been a couple. You may have seen the story of an owner in India who purportedly had, in his own words, a gentle drop and split the swing arm of his Scrambler wide open. Or the reports of the engine stalling when engaging the clutch in second or third. Well, maybe, but we don't know the exact circumstances of the fall. Take this kind of information with a pinch of salt. Warranties are there for this precise reason. The fueling issue, for instance, can almost certainly be resolved with a straightforward software update. And I have to say, I didn't experience it personally whilst test riding the bike. Triumph will fix things, just like BMW are fixing the faulty starter relays on their €25,000 1300 GS. I'm not advising you totally ignore these online horror stories, but by the same token, don't let them put you off completely. Dealers are there to sort this kind of stuff out for you. Now, before I give my final thoughts on this Speed 400, I'm sure a few of you have been thinking, didn't you put a deposit down on a Scrambler 400X way back in October, RocketMan? You're right, yes I did. A lovely khaki green 400X, which are now all sold out for the foreseeable future right across Europe, by the way. So when's it coming? It isn't. I didn't tell you, but I cancelled my order before Christmas, so well before I tested this Speed 400, and got my deposit back. Not because it's a bad bike, but because I put my sensible hat on and realised that, unfortunately, I have no real use for a 40 horsepower motorcycle. See, I use my Honda ADV 350 scooter for local trips to the beach and for grocery shopping with Mrs. RM, my Speed Twin 1200 when I fancy a bit of fun on my own, and the Transalp for touring and longer group rides. Now this just about covers all my two-wheeled exploits. And as much as I like the looks of the Scrambler, and as much as I would have loved one in my garage alongside the other bikes, upon reflection, I just couldn't think where I would actually go with it. Once the novelty had worn off, a bit like it did with the Honda Monkey and the Honda Grom, I think the Scrambler would have just sat in the garage gathering dust. So no, sorry, I won't be getting the 400X. So this 400, is it worth getting? For you, obviously, not for me, I've just explained why. Yes, absolutely. If you want a good-looking, affordable, relatively powerful, all-round motorcycle with the brand image that comes with owning a Triumph, it's comfortable, it will keep up with other road users, far better than a 125 or a Royal Enfield Hunter 350 for that matter. The brakes are good. Triumph claims it will average 3.5 litres per 100 kilometres, but I actually managed 3.2 during the time I had the bike, which, considering I was the very first person to take it out, so a very tight engine, it's pretty good going. It looks nice, rides surprisingly well, doesn't cost much to buy or run, and being a Triumph has good curbside appeal and should have decent residuals. Compared to, say, the identically priced but less exciting CB300R, this is the sort of bike you'll be taking one last look at in your garage as you close the door. And to me, pride of ownership is a big part of motorcycling. What a pity I have no real use for one. So, is it an imposter as the thumbnail suggests? Well, no, it isn't really. No more than, say, the BMW 310 GS or KTM 390. Certainly going on these first impressions, I think it's worthy of the Triumph badge. It's good looking, it's affordable, it's fun to ride, and in all honesty, I do kind of regret cancelling my Scrambler. I was more impressed by this little 400 than I was by the Tiger 900 I tried last week. The Tiger is the better bike, of course, and so it should be at €18,000, but the Speed 400 is less than a third of the price, so my expectations were lower, and I was all the more impressed. If I had to nitpick, the fueling at low speed is very Euro 5, meaning that it can be a bit jerky around town, especially with the first 3 gears being so short. But yes, it's a very nice little bike, perky engine, affordable, premium looks, fun. It really does tick all the boxes. Well, most of them, given the price. Test it for yourself and you'll see what I mean. I don't need a 400, but I'd still like one in my garage. Anyway, that's all for today. Let me know in the comments how frustrated or indeed indifferent you are that I cancelled my order for the Scrambler version. And as always, thanks for watching.